Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Harvey Oberfeld, a retired but still engaged TV reporter. Check out his blog, Keeping It Real, on HarveyOberfeld.ca. Welcome back to the show, Harvey. It's been a long time.
Good to be back.
Well, yeah, you're back just in time to see a BC election. You said there were some pretty interesting poll results that caught your eye.
Yeah, it's really interesting what's going on with the polls nowadays. The Greens are coming on in many places, and this election, more than most, you may actually find that the Greens could spell the path to victory for the Liberals. I mean, as amazing as that may sound, in the past people have always said, well, a Green vote splits the NDP vote. But the numbers have been fairly low, and it hasn't really, I think, been the determining factor for a lot of people. But for the first time ever, the Greens are actually leading the NDP on Vancouver Island. I mean, that's astounding. And then across the province also, the Greens are up to 15, anywhere between, anywhere 13 to 17, 18%. And if you add that into you factor in the number of votes that could be in many ridings, the last election, for example, the Greens pulled in, 146,000 votes across the province. They actually captured 8% and that's 8% of the popular vote. Well, if they're up to 15% of the vote, that's quite substantial. And I think what's happened is, certainly on Vancouver Island, the Greens are attracting more attention than the NDP, and even in the urban areas, the Greens are actually pulling people away, even from some Liberals. I mean, the Liberal supporters in the past who have just decided, no, we've got to go in a new direction. So the Green vote, they certainly don't have enough to form power. In fact, they're not even running in all the ridings. I think they're running in about, 80 or 87 ridings. And they're not going to form power. Make no mistake about that. But they could really hurt the NDP this time around, and I think that's why, the Liberals could be looking to the Greens to help them regain power.
I've almost heard in some cases the Liberals might backhandedly be supporting the Greens.
Well, I've noticed the lack of ads. You don't see Liberal ads attacking the Greens. They're going after the NDP and maybe hoping that some people that can't stand the Liberals will say, well, okay, I can't stand the Liberals. I don't want to vote Liberal. They've been in too long. Change is as good as the rest. But I don't like the NDP either because of the weaknesses that the Liberal ads are showing. So where else do I go? Well, I know. I'll go to the Greens. And even though I don't expect them to win, it will be a protest vote. Well, that fits quite nicely, I would think, into the Liberal strategy. So, what is that expression? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I haven't seen the media making much of that other than report the poll results. But I think this could actually be part of the Liberal strategy to hope for, and even by not criticizing or attacking the Greens, hoping the Greens will pull more votes away from the NDP, and that gives the Liberals a path up the center or the center-right again.
I wonder why the NDP doesn't mention, our policies are just as green as the Greens.
Well, I think the NDP, they're in a more difficult position because, the key to winning elections traditionally in BC has been the center, the undecided people in the center. You have dedicated people on the right-wing side, on the center-right side. They'll vote Liberal. They'll never vote NDP. Then you have these dyed-in-the-wool NDPers. It's like my party to the end, and I will always vote NDP. I've always voted NDP. And so those people are also dedicated. And in the middle, you've got about 15 to 20% of the voters, the undecided, the people who will go either way, who can vote Liberal, who have voted NDP. They are the swing vote. And they hold the key, or have held the key traditionally, to winning elections in BC. And so the NDP, it has a dual focus. On one hand, it wants to try to win some of that center undecided vote that can swing their way. But on the other hand, they're afraid of losing too much to the Greens, so they try to walk a very fine line of trying to appeal to the environmentalist type, the anti-development type, the Green supporter types, at the same time not saying too much to alienate those undecided in the center. It's a difficult task for sure, but I think the NDP seems to be getting, from what I've seen, more worried about what's happening with loss of the support to the Greens, because the people in the center, I mean, if they don't like the Liberals, the NDP might be counting, well, our negative ads about the Liberals will maybe solidify some of that vote, but they certainly have to look towards the Green supporters, because if they bleed more of those away, then they have trouble on that flank.
We'll have more with Harvey Oberfeld right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Harvey Oberfeld. Harvey, have you seen anything in the platforms presented by the BC parties that catches your eye?
Well, a lot of it catches my eye because it points out to me that nothing actually will affect me or help me in any particular way, very little. And I think that's one of the problems of this campaign. Usually when you have a campaign, people sell promises of great things to come, or we're going to set things right. Well, I started watching the promises, and the reality is, I'm a middle-class retired voter, and I've paid taxes for years and years and years, and what I've seen since I've retired, or like every working middle-class person has seen, their income taxes have gone up federally, municipally, school taxes, transit taxes, regional taxes, residential parking fees, ICBC, hydro, gasoline taxes, sales taxes, and don't forget MSP. Don't even get me started on MSP. So all these things have increased over the last years and decade and that. And what's happened? What have the parties done for me? Well, I watched the platforms, and I watched all three party platforms, and there's nothing in it for the middle class. I mean, it's fine if you're running businesses and you want some, you want some corporate write-offs. It's fine if you've got high income and they took away a surtax on, let's say, high income earners. It's fine if you're at the other end, if you're on welfare or disability, if you take the Golden Ears Bridge quite often. All these programs they've announced, for interest-free student loans, higher welfare rates, better spending on education, even a guaranteed income program from the Greens, more park rangers. I mean, going to freeze the ferry fares, all this kind of thing. It doesn't really affect most of us. I mean, most of us are in the middle, and none of the parties are really offering us anything full-time or long-range that will assist us. In other words, the parties are helping those on the upper end, they're helping those on the lower end, and those of us in the middle, the best we can expect is maybe some temporary relief from hydro, maybe a change in the MSP eventually down the road, I mean, I looked at the campaigns, and there's nothing, ICBC, maybe a temporary freeze, but for how long? Absolutely nothing in there for the middle class. And I think that's part of the reason that so many people are just tuning out the election campaign, because they hear all the announcements, they hear all the promises, and they suddenly realize, well, that's not going to affect me. Well, that's not going to help me. Well, that does nothing for me and for my family. And I don't understand what's happened to the parties where the key to victory used to be appealing to those in the middle, the great people undecided in the middle who would swing either way. And none of the parties, from what I've seen, are coming up with much that will help those people in the middle, the people who actually pay the taxes, the middle class, in any way. And I think that's part of the reason there's very little interest in the campaign.
Well, I saw a recent report. It says there's going to be a hollowing out of the middle class due to this move to automation, where a lot of jobs like truck driving will be done by robots. But what about the hollowing out that's taking place with increasing taxes, but incomes that are stagnant or the same?
Well, I have friends of mine who are still working. I have one friend in particular who works for a very large corporation. He rents. So he's happy with this promise of a $400 annual rent subsidy by the NDP. But he points out everything else has gone up. Transit has gone up. His rent has gone up every single year. His ICBC, his gas, his hydro, everything has gone up in prices. And yet the only thing that hasn't gone up in 3 years is his salary. And people in the middle are seeing that squeeze. People who are renters, people who are just trying to hang on to a place to live in the middle are not getting increases at work anything close to what the increases in their taxes, their rents, their ICBC, their hydro, anything close to what they're having to shell out for things like that. And people are hurting. And I don't see any of the parties in this election doing anything to appeal to assist those people. And I think that's really gonna affect the turnout. I wouldn't be surprised. The turnouts have not been very big in the elections in BC. And what was it, 1973? I was looking at that. In 1983, the turnout was 70.5%. You know what it was last time in 2013? 55.3%. I wouldn't be surprised this time if it's even less than that, because the parties are not appealing to the vast majority of British Columbians. Their programs seem to be to those on the periphery. And I think you're going to find a lot of people are just going to say, there's nothing in it for me, and I'm just going to stay away.
Well, do you find perhaps people are thinking it doesn't matter who I vote for, my needs are just going to be ignored, what they promise they won't do, so why bother voting?
That's right. In fact, as I pointed out on my blog, I was thinking, what will benefit me as a retired senior? Well, maybe if they bring back free ferry rides during the week, that I could go down and get on a ferry and ride across to the Vancouver Island and back from Horseshoe Bay or Tawasin. But then it occurred to me, I'm sure if they bring that in, they'll probably hike the parking rates at the terminals as well. And no, I'm not going to take a bus out to Tawasin just to go and ride on the ferry back and forth. I mean, they give with one hand and they take with the other, but the problem is they're taking more than they're giving.
We'll have more with Harvey Oberfeld right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Harvey Oberfeld. Harvey, we just had this investigation and report on the firing of the BC healthcare workers. One of them committed suicide after he was wrongfully dismissed. I noticed the government says we accept the recommendations in the report, but you never hear the government say we will act on those recommendations. No,
the government doesn't want to be committed to doing anything. And also there's there's a real reluctance of government ever to say, I apologize. We were wrong. They don't like to do that because that could cost them a lot of money. This part of this story that really bothers me, and I wrote about it, is the human factor. I mean, these were human beings with families, with friends, with neighbors. They were known where they, used to shop and that. Can you imagine? Put anybody listening, put themselves in their place. You go to work, you do a good job, you're doing an honest job, and all of a sudden, out in public, comes this accusation that you were ripped off, you were dishonest, you were corrupt, whatever. And imagine what that does, first of all, to your immediate family, to have this out in the public, and then for the government to say the RCMP are investigating you. I mean, this is like being condemned before you're, and sentenced before you're even found to be guilty of anything. And then we found out in this case there wasn't even an RCMP investigation. Now think of the impact on the immediate family in these cases. Think of the kids. Think of the wife. Think of the marriage. Think of the relatives around, the cousins and the uncles and the aunts and everybody. All the people that were the parents, the grandparents, how they would react to this. And then your neighbors see you coming out, you go to, you're out of work, you're fired, and then you go out and your neighbors think, well, you're a corrupt sleazebag who was, dishonest. Imagine what it's like to live under those conditions. And then multiply that by 8 families facing that, and then it comes out, oh, they actually didn't do anything. This was bureaucracy run mad. This was bureaucracy out of control. And as far as I could tell, I don't think anybody's head has rolled on this yet. I think it's just been, oh, well, I guess we made a mistake. Now let's move on. No, you don't move on. The impact on the families is so great. In this case, we had one person who committed suicide. The pressure got him to the point, apparently, that he just couldn't take it anymore. But think of the agony that the others went through. Think of the agony of all the other families and everybody that knew them and everybody, this was a real travesty. And I thought the government handled it in a disgraceful way, basically dismissing it for the longest time, not even wanting to mention these people by name. It was as if they weren't really human. They were just statistics on a piece of paper. And I think that tells you a lot about what's wrong with government these days, that not only do they not act properly in many, many cases, but when it happens, they don't even take responsibility for it. They slough it off, and then when it's exposed that even what they said, that, oh, there's a police investigation, we can't comment. No, there wasn't. Even then, the way they dealt with it in the end, I thought was disgraceful.
Well, Harvey, you always hear the excuse, we can't say anything because it's before the courts. There's no reason why you can't comment. That's just made up.
Well, you can comment. You maybe can't say anything about a settlement because this might be litigated. But when it came out that what actually happened or what actually didn't happen, I mean, that was the other thing. I think the government could have done a lot more to basically to cut this off at the pass and deal with it much more humanely than it seemed to me they were dealing with it. And I know there are legal liabilities, but there's also a human perspective. You were dealing, as I said in my piece, you were dealing with people, you were dealing with families. And I think the government had a responsibility to do a mea culpa and say, look, this was a terrible mistake that we apologize for, and we were wrong, and those people responsible should be, as far as I'm concerned, called up on the carpet, disciplined, suspended, or even fired. And as far as I can see, I don't think there's been anything like that happen yet.
Well, Harvey, I know that people who work in government behind closed doors joke and laugh about the average person.
Well, I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I guess in any organization, you're going to have people that are not the best at what they do or towards their clientele. But I think that's it's management's position. It's their role to make sure things are done properly, and when it's exposed that it isn't done properly, then they have to rectify it. And I don't think they did enough to rectify it in this case.
Harvey, you spend your winters in Florida. You've seen the U.S. now operate under Donald Trump. Did you see or feel anything different with him in charge instead of Barack Obama?
Oh, well, I think the impression I get, and I was in California also, and as well as Florida this year. I get the feeling Americans have a much greater pride or understanding in what he's done internationally, that they feel that Obama was so weak internationally. They're happy to see, Trump exercising American power a little more. A lot of them will agree with you that he doesn't seem to have any strategy or overall policy. It's all just shoot from the lip and the hip when he wants to, but they like to see, they're almost happy with that, that he's at least America's not been taken for a fool, or they felt that Obama was so weak internationally. Now, domestically, the Americans are still just as divided as they were before. In fact, even some Republicans just think the guy is just totally out of his depth, totally inept, almost a buffoon in public office. And even Republicans will tell you that privately, but still maintain, but he's better than Hillary Clinton because they have such a hate-on for Hillary Clinton, and and that they're willing to put up with this incompetent buffoon in the form of Donald Trump being in the White House, and they're still very, very divided on domestic issues. They don't think he's very good. They don't think he's surrounded himself with some really good people on the domestic front, but internationally, most of them, even Democrats, are sort of grudgingly saying, well, he is bringing back some sort of American presence in other places in the world where Obama had actually withdrawn and, basically ceded to Russia and China and even Iran and those places. So he's getting them involved, but they're actually happy to see it, although they have some concerns about where will this end up, how much are we going to get involved. And lately, of course, I'm sort of seeing him now lashing out at Canada. I mean, NAFTA previously was all about lashing out at Mexico, but now he's directing his ire towards Canada, and I'm not so sure where that's going to end up, because it's hard to know with Trump whether it's rhetoric just for the domestic audience wherever he happens to be appearing, or whether he has some sort of plan. But I'm not ready to panic yet, but I think that should be of concern, and it's also going to test Justin Trudeau and see what he's made of, trying to deal with this loose cannon in the United States.
Harvey, thank you so much for chatting with us.
You're welcome.
My guest has been Harvey Oberfeld, retired but still very engaged with the issues we see right now. Check out his blog, Keeping It Real. You can find it on harveyoberfeld.ca. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Questions for us or our guests can be emailed to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.